Okay. Uh, we discussed clause 17, which was performance bond, and we discussed performance bond from a different handout, and we tried to understand that how or at what point of time this particular amount is claimed. So whenever you are talking about any security or deposit in any other form, not always in cash, maybe in some through some other form, two two or three questions generally comes in. So when we are discussing about performance bond, the first question is, when is it asked for to be submitted, in what format, or against for what function it is submitted, and when it is returned back, or how it is utilized. These are the few questions which can come up with all different kinds of security deposits. Okay. The next clause was clause 18, known as clerk of work. Okay. Now the clerk of works is a clerk who look after the works. But who this clerk is, or who this person is? He is a person who is generally appointed by the owner. Okay, the client appoints because the client pays him the money. But whether he is capable to do that or not, capable to look after the execution of the work or not, or supervise the works or not, is generally approved by the architect. So the appointment and the salary comes from the owner. Just everything, the instructions and everything comes from the architect. So he works under architect's direction. He inspects the work, give notice of bad work. That means day-to-day supervision. So once you go for your internship, you will be given a logbook along with a sites like field observation study. So you go to the field every day to day. You keep taking records, and in your own remarks condition, in remarks column, you write what all things you have realized. Okay. It is similar like you go to a study tour and your friend from engineering course go to a study tour. Okay. So both of them observe the same structure, but because you are an architecture student or you have been taken to do the job, do the job of this clerk, your appraisal is much more important as an architectural conclusion. So only if the clerk knows, the clerk of work knows that what needs to be recorded and what is the synopsis of that record, as well as the information that needs to be provided back to the architect. So then only he is allowed to work. So he is basically a approved knowledgeable site supervisor. He doesn't need to know the work. He doesn't have to go for the work. Sometimes the contractor works if the worker doesn't arrive. So but this clerk of work is a different person. What he cannot do is, he cannot instruct for start of a sub work or a sub stage of a work. He cannot go and tell that please start this particular work. He cannot impose the works which are assigned in the chart of execution. Neither can he ask or give his own idea while the execution of the work. Man lo ki there was a balcony getting constructed and he felt that there can be certain small changes in the balcony. No, he cannot do that because in clause 16 in the architect status, it is clearly written that who can give this kind of instructions. Okay. Now what he can do is he can put this instruction in the notice, and if the architect feels after the day's audit that it was okay, that needs to be incorporated, then it's the architect's written or verbal instruction which goes directly to the contractor. Okay. So that's clerk of work. The next is contractor's field organization. Okay. How a contractor is supposed to be organizing his teams, machineries, and other things at site. That is generally mentioned in here. So here, let's consider that a building is being built. Building is being built at a site, particular site. For example, say your design for the COVID hospital near the confluence of this Pan Post Road and this STA flyover is approved, and the owner, which is you, has appointed another architect. Now this architect is going to get it executed, like design it. Or you can say the owner is somebody else. Owner is the municipality or municipal corporation. And you are the architect who has given the designs and all. Now it is going to get executed. Now, is it possible for you to constantly be at the site supervising the work? No, definitely not. So what you do is you employ a clerk of work. He may be an architect, he may not be an architect, but he should have the uh, he should have the capability to supervise what you are instructing him. So what have I just now said? Is there anything wrong in that? Just now means that the municipal corporation wants to get a hospital built. You have been appointed with proper letter of appointment as the architect to design. You have designed it. It is good for construction. It has been approved and sanctioned. And then what you do is you appoint an architect, you appoint a clerk of work, and then he is going to supervise the work at the site. So have I spoken anything wrong? Can anybody come up and say what is wrong in this particular statement? Do you want me to repeat again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir means have you understood the mistake or do you want me to repeat? And if anybody else has the response, they can say I have told something wrong. Should I repeat the statement again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will repeat. The Rourkela Municipal Corporation needed a COVID hospital in a land, so they have employed any one of you as an architect. The proper arrangement, the agreements were signed. So you designed, you gave the good for construction working drawing. So now you cannot be at the site every day. So what you have done is you have appointed a clerk of work to look after the instructions that you have given at the site. So every day, this clerk of work whom you have appointed will look after all the works and report you every day. So till now, this is what has been negotiated and decided. So what's wrong in this?
The clerk of work will see the work of the contractor.
Okay, so he will look after the work of the contractor and report to the architect. The contractor is working out what the architect's instructions are. But I have said something.
Sir,
Yes.
but clerk of work, as the hospital is built, the owner is not the architect. The owner would be.
The chairman of the municipal corporation. Or maybe anybody else. So
Then how architect will appoint? The municipal organization will appoint, but architect will approve only.
yes, that's absolutely correct. So the architect will not appoint, architect will just approve, but this clerk of work has to be appointed by the owner. Okay. So I guess most of you are thinking in a different line. So please be careful. So coming to the next section, which is contractors field organization. Now there are certain responsibilities of the contractor. One of it is to arrange the construction site for certain activities. What are they? The contractor will provide the following, which is an engineer in charge who will be qualified and competent person and will be available at the site at all the times. So the contractor also appoints a engineer in charge. It is also very common in our campus also. Whenever we are assigning the contractor some work, he has 3 or 4 multiple sites where he works. At 3 or 4 multiple sites, he appoints one engineer in charge each. That engineer comes and decides what is the quantum of work, how many people will be required on that particular day, and accordingly he executes the contractor's the work which was supposed to be done by the contractor. Contractor doesn't work, the workers work, but the workers work, the quantum of the work is decided and weighted by the engineer in charge. The contractor may be just a wealthy person who can invest and earn profit. He doesn't need to know every work, but this engineer in charge needs to know that work. So engineer in charge is appointed by the contractor. Okay. So this particular engineer, once the work is getting executed, what he does is, suppose you want to do the painting of your room. So you have gone for a cost-based contract. So whatever has been painted, after it is executed, a bill will be shown by the contractor. Now, how will the contractor know how much of paint has been utilized in your house for painting? Or per square feet, how many layers has been provided, when it was provided, how it was purchased? So on behalf of the contractor, this engineer gives the calculation. Okay, because the contract is actually between the contractor and the client. So the client appoints the architect to work on his behalf, and the contractor appoints the engineer in charge, commonly known as the foreman, to look after the work at a particular site for execution of a work which the contractor has got from the tendering. Okay. Next is, any instruction given to him will mean that it is given to the contractor. So if the architect or the owner gives any instruction to the engineer in charge at site on any day, it is meant that the instruction will be given back or given or forwarded to the contractor also. Next, the contractor should provide necessary equipment such as hoists, ladders, plant, tools, transport of material, and many other things. So whatever needs to be required at the site for getting the construction executed, or anything that is required to be transported to the site, everything has to be provided by the contractor. This comes within his jurisdiction. Next is, there has to be a site office. It can be of any size as required for the project. He has to make those temporary site office, and in one of the small space within that office, a 10 square meter approximately, or maybe more than that, housing essential furnitures required has to be delineated for the clerk of work approved by the architect or appointed by the owner. So provide site office. So in big scale construction, what we generally do is, we have initially a temporary structure for this site office, and then once the basement or the ground floors or one superstructure is built, we shift the site office into that part which is built, and then we keep on building the superstructures. Okay. Next is, he can provide, like it is written that he provides a telephone where essential. So it is something like, say, a work is happening in a multi-story structure, maybe 10th or 12th floor higher up, and it is getting communicated to the lowest level from where they are transporting concrete in pipes and all. So how do you communicate, or how individual workers or individual supervisors are getting communicated? They have to have telephones or walkie-talkies or something like that. So if that is required, this has to be provided. So you have seen those cage elevators or lifts which struck midway during the construction. So there is a telephone line within that lift also. Next is any additional things required for safety of the construction, which is, so you can have scaffoldings, shutterings, the stages, the planks. If at all in the periphery of the building some guard rails are required. So when you are building a structure, a small building, then what happens is the workers carry this concrete, this workable concrete on top of their head and climb the steps. They might not have been built. They may not have the handrails or balusters. So you will see that in this kind of buildings, there are 2 or 3 rods with intermediate balusters temporarily placed. So from where, who arranges for that? Those were not there in the drawing. So anything essentially coming up during the system. Yes. Anything required for the construction or for the work of the contractor. We were discussing like an electrician or a person who comes to fit the AC needs to bring in the ladder, needs to bring in the necessary tools. So these are generally provided by the contractor. And last but not the least, if there are workers staying at the site in temporary facilities, not only their temporary habitation or temporary structures for them to live, but proper sanitary facilities, so washrooms and all needs to be provided at the site. Say a small canteen or a group bathrooms and all with shower facilities and toilets has to be provided at the site. Okay. So these are the contractors field organization. So you are going to sign a contract where these particular sections are to be mentioned, that who all are to be, like this is general. The contractor has to approve that he is going to provide proper sanitary facility to the workers whom he is going to make work, or he is going to provide necessary supports for scaffoldings and other guardrails, or he will provide proper safety helmets and safety shoes to the workers. So all the safety measures that he has to provide to his workers has to be promised, because if any mishap happens for the workers, the client or the architect should not be held liable for that. There's a contractor who is going to be held liable. So clarifying all these sections is required in the contract itself. Right? Coming to the next point, which is clause 24. Clause 24 says water for construction. Now, contractor shall obtain permission to use municipal water or a well water, pay those necessary charges, make arrangement for the storage of those at the site, and if required, any temporary pipings that are required. Okay, this is something like, say, you will see that if you are building a residence or a school or an office which has a septic tank, so when the foundations are built, excavations are done, and the excavation for the septic tank is also done. So initially the septic tank is built. The septic tank is built first along with the foundation, and that septic tank is used as a temporary storage for water for construction, because municipal water or those well water is not available throughout the day, may not be available throughout the day. So that water is used for construction or for curing of the bricks, right? So for all those activities, if water is required, but for that the contractor has to obtain the permission from municipality. So there are two differences. During construction work, two things are required. One is electricity, another is water. Water is compulsorily required. Electricity may or may not be required from the central line. So if it is electricity that you need during your construction, the owner has to apply with necessary document to the electricity distribution board. So here the contractor is not involved, so this section doesn't comes in the contract document. But if it is water, how much water will be required for the works and all are to be arranged by the contractor. So what the contractor does is, he has those facility, he has those forms, he submits those forms to the local municipalities or municipal corporations or any other authorities who supply water, maybe PHE, Public Health Engineering section supplies water. So he has to contact those people. And if he finds that there is a central connection below the road, from there he will construct temporary pipings to trap that water and pay for that accordingly. So construction water charges are generally paid by the contractor. So what the contractor will do is, rather than paying regularly for municipal water, he will dig a temporary well, put in a submersible pump and pipes, and then through that boring, he will pull in what necessary water for construction to save the money, to increase his profits. Okay. The internet is so fluctuating that after every slide I have to upload. Okay, the next clause is clause 31, certificates and payments. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Clause 31, certificates and payments. Now here, architects will ensure interim certificate of payment against running accounts or bills. Running account means during the process of work, any bills which are being approved, and architect through the clerk of work has got to know that, okay, that particular component of work is completed. So the bill is good enough to be repaid. So he will keep a copy of those bills and do the necessary payment and give a certificate of that payment. So in that certificate, he might write whatever is necessary to be added. Say if the work comes at a defective, or if it is a provisional cost or provisional price that is being paid, or is that amount only the principal and he has paid the tax added separately or not. For example, say the architect is supposed to pay the contractor, who is a government contractor maybe, because the architect is doing a government project. So he's supposed to pay the contractor some X plus delta X amount of money. Now this X is the money that is contracted, and delta X is the amount of money which the contractor, upon receiving the total money, is going to pay back to the government as his tax, as his service tax. Okay. It is something like, how can I say? You have gone to have food in a restaurant, and the amount that you pay is the price of the food and the service tax that the restaurant is charging. So generally what the restaurant will do is, the restaurant will take the money from you and then they will pay that money to government as their service tax. But it is your money which is going as the tax. It is not the restaurant's money. Restaurant is helping you to submit your money in the as a tax. But here, in this particular construction cases, the building construction contracts and all, there is a different way of cutting the tax. So see, you are paying the tax, you are paying the salary to the contractor. Now contractor, because he is providing a service to you, also has to take certain amount of money from you in his bill and has to pay it to the government. Now there is a high chance that if these bills and the payment certificates are not clear, then the taxation may, there will be a lot of ghapla and all. There will be this other way. So you want to be sure that as much amount of money you are paying to the contractor, they are all white money, and whatever tax is incurred against that money, the contractor is going to pay that to the government. So instead, what you can do is, you can give in your certificate that X amount of rupees is being paid against the bill which has been submitted by the contractor on so and so date, and the delta X amount incurring as a service tax behind that is being paid to government, and you get a bill from government, that is, or the taxation or the revenue department, that amount of money is being paid. So you utna paisa tum deduct kar lo. So from X plus delta X, you are deducting delta X and paying the rest amount X. So this procedure of cutting the tax at the source, मतलब पहले काट के बाकी पैसा देना, is generally known as a tax deducted at source, commonly known as a TDS. You can ask your seniors or your relatives or your parents when they get salaries, they don't like the tax which they are supposed to pay, the income tax is not what they pay. It is paid by their employer themselves. So they cut the tax and pay you the rest, and that tax amount is submitted to the government, and then they get a certificate that that money has been submitted, and they give you that certificate so that you don't have to again pay. Okay, now here something else comes up. Somewhere here, owner will be regarded as the trustee of such retention amount, because from each bill that you pay the contractor, a small amount of money is kept aside as a retention money. क्योंकि अगर बाद में इसमें कोई problem आएगा, so this is the money that I'm going to use. मतलब you are not always paying 100% of the bills that are being submitted to you in every individual stage. You have completed, you have done your building bylaws class. There was a course of code of practice in your building bylaws. Have you done that? Was it discussed by Vinit sir? Code of practice means,
No, sir.
No, sir.
this means that how much, for which part of the work an architect should claim how much amount of money from the client. Was it discussed?
No, sir.
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
So probably that was there in the old curriculum, building bylaws and code of practice. So here what I will tell you is that once the architect or once the client approves or signs the contract with a contractor, he has to pay him some initial amount of money to start the work, which he may opt not to pay also. It is up to the contractor, who has to first invest the money and then submit the bill and get the money reimbursed. So once he is submitting, say 20% काम हो गया, he is submitting a bill. So what the architect will suggest the client is, don't pay him the total amount of for that 20% of the work. Pay him a little less and keep that money aside as a retention amount, which you have retained. मान लो कि after every week you are going to pay him 1 lakh rupees. So what you do is you pay him 90,000 rupees, and 10,000 rupees you are keeping as a retention money. No, this is not for security. This is a percentage which is determined while signing the contract only. Ki you will provide me a bill and I will pay you 90% of the bill or 85% of the bill only. Rest amount will be going into your retention, which will be retained by me. And it is all, and that money will be utilized if you do not perform and your performance bond was signed. So if I have not been able to procure your performance bond initially, I will use this amount of money, the retention amount, as your performance bond for the time being. There can be a lot of contracts जहाँ पे बोला हो कि छोटा काम है, I will not expect a performance bond from you, because performance bond 5% of the total construction cost देने जाओगे तो मतलब the contractor कंगाल हो जाएंगे, उनके पास पैसा नहीं रहेगा to invest in the actual work. So what he does is, पहले पैसा नहीं चाहिए but तुम काम कर दो and you submit with the bill, उसमें से थोड़ा सा amount I will keep aside for retention or for any rectifying any defect in the work. Okay. Now ऐसे कर करके मान लो कि total project cost था 1 crore, sorry, say 10 lakh rupees था. In 10 months you have paid, you are supposed to pay him 1 lakh rupees every month. So what you have done is you have paid 90,000 instead of 1 lakh every month. So after 10 months, he has got, instead of 10 lakh, he has got 9 lakh rupees. So on that, at that point of time, when almost more than 90% of the work is complete, and you are sending the drawing for getting the completion certificate, as well as the owner has taken the handover. So handover lene ke baad the owner will plan to shift or to do the interiors and all. So it is not good for starting living, but it is good for handing over the ownership. So that is the point we call generally where the virtual completion certificate or the completion certificate is issued to the client, to the contractor. मतलब contractor will say कि नहीं काम लगभग खत्म हो चुका है, थोड़ा बहुत जो काम है वो ये बाकी drafts processing होते होते it will be done. And if he is done with that virtual completion certificate, if he receives that, he can again start another project. So during this virtual completion certificate issue, 50% of the total retained amount of money is paid back to the contractor. मतलब जो 10 लाख रुपए 90 लाख दे चुके थे, when 90% of the work is done, instead of, though you have received 100% of the bill, you have paid 90% of that. So the 10% जो retention हुआ है in individual stages, उसका 50%, that means 10 लाख का 50% is 5 lakh. 5 lakh you give it back to the contractor and still keep that 5%, which you can convert into something which is written here as defects liability period. So defect liability period का definition हम लोग definition handouts में देखेंगे. But during discussion of this certificate and payment, I have talked about a process of cutting the tax at the source and giving the money. जो right side में लिखा है देखो, tax deducted at source. ठीक है? I have explained the same thing already. एक बार इसको बाद में देख लेना. It is a procedure. Tax deducted at source is not a tax, but it is a procedure of cutting a tax at the origin and giving back the rest. Is it clear? Is it clear to most of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Next, I will directly jump to clause 40. One of the very important clauses which has to be there. And this is, I will take this opportunity to explain this section and also respond to few questions which I did not address when the contract was being signed or when the tendering was done. Somebody asked me that if because of a natural calamity and all, the contractor is not able to do the work on right time, then on what basis should you give the extra time, or should he be considered to have done a breach of contract or not? Okay. So this is the section which may be there in your contract document, which is known as extension of time. It says that contractor shall request extension of time in writing, stating the reason and extent of additional time required. So it is a contractor. मतलब client may be very unhappy कि इसके बीच में मतलब there are coronas and all, works are stopped and all, but he from himself will not come and give the extension of time. It has to be the contractor who will request in writing for the extension of time. He will come and say, the contractor will come and say कि ये काम इस चीज के लिए डिले हो चुका है, which जिसमें मेरा कोई कंट्रोल था नहीं, या where the architect or the client was responsible for the delay, or maybe some other authority which was beyond the control of the contractor. So for that, what quantum or what quantity of additional time is required, this has to be asked by the contractor. Now, on behalf of the client, the architect checks the reason and then instructs for the approval of the extension of time, or he may reduce the extended time and still allow that, or he may reject the extension of time. All three possibilities are there. He may approve it, or he may approve it with modification of the deadline or extended time, or he may refuse it. So what are the reasons? These are very limited reasons. Okay. These are very limited reasons because if there is a case where contractor has asked for an extension of time and the architect has not provided that extension of time, that causes problem for the contractor. The contractor will take this case to the court, or he might ask somebody to arbitrate, a third party, to listen to both the parties and then decide whether at all it is arbitrable or not, whether there can be an arbitration or conciliation to solve this problem or not. Okay, so let's discuss the points. The first one says force majeure. Force majeure is a very common thing, that is it is a force like it is a occurrence or an event where the contractor has no control to prevent it. To prevent that force, it is such a superior force which is very difficult or which is not at all possible for the contractor to oblige or to control or to prevent. Okay. Second one is exceptionally inclement weather. So it is not inclement weather or not bad weather, but exceptionally inclement weather. That means, suppose you are doing the flooring of a house, and at that point of time there is a tsunami in the coastal states. So that means it is an inclement weather. It is an exceptional inclement weather, but that is not stopping you from working in your interior. But suppose you were painting the house, the exterior of a house. There were a lot of scaffoldings in the exterior on where people were standing and painting the house. And there is a cyclone or torrential rain. Or say, you better know that in Rourkela in the summer months, 3 months, if at all you have stayed during the summer holidays and all, it becomes very difficult to work at construction site during the day. So we start early. We end up our work by 12 noon or 1 p.m. and then we take a long break and we start again working from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at night. So these are because of exceptionally inclement weather. If that prevails, then you can approve an extension of time. But here I want to also add is, as we discussed, that the contractor, when he signs a contract or a bidder who is giving a quotation, has to keep in account some degree of cost to overcome these situations, these risks. Okay, if I recall that Vivek asked me a question key, if there is an extra contingency, why don't we add that? Why will the bidder not add that particular contingency amount? Because there may be this inclement weather or there can be a fire. But then at that point of time in that tendering chapter, I said if he adds this, then what the problem he will face is he will not get the contract. But what he can do is, there was a section where we said that the conditions set by bidders or set by tenderers, there you can say that you are giving your best shot that if everything goes right, this is the cost. But in case there are some force majeure or some other things for which an extension of time is required, so either extend the time, approve that in the contract, then I am okay with this amount of money, or else you promise that you will pay some extra amount of money at that point of time after that problem is over, which I will utilize to get back to actual workflow or actual time for the work. Okay. The next reason can be loss or damage due to fire. Now this fire should be due to the negligence of people. Okay, say kahin pe there was a firecracker and all. So the firecracker fell into the cement area. Cement is supposed to be inflammable, so it caught fire. Or you have kept a load of wooden planks for scaffoldings. So by mistake there was a fire, and you have not taken necessary measures to prevent the fire. That can happen. So if there is any loss or damage which has happened due to this fire, or say ऊपर से कुछ under construction चल रहा था, some debris has fallen from top and which has paused the work for a while. So for that, you can ask for an extension of time. The other reasons are civil commotions, riots, strike, but this strike has to affect the building construction activity. मतलब लोग भूख हड़ताल में रोड में बैठे हैं, so that should not lead to extension of time. But if your workers are not working because of some riots and all, they are representing a political party जो सबको बुला लिया है, आज से काम कोई नहीं करने वाला है. If that is causing a problem, those strikes are causing a problem, then you can ask, the contractor can ask for extension of time. Next is architect's instruction. So during the phase of work, the architect has given some additional instructions which had to be executed, which was not there in the initial contract, or which was not asked in the initial tendering process. So because of that architect's instruction, if there is a postponement of work, or it is similar to like the client was not clear with the architect's instructions, so he asked in written for the architect to clarify his instructions. So if architect is not clearing the instruction which he has earlier given, then the contractor will ask, I have been repeatedly asking the architect for clarification, उसन्होंने clarify नहीं किया है, so मैं काम नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ. Okay. Next is contractor not receiving proper instruction even after written request is made. So this is what I just now discussed. कि contractor बार-बार पूछ रहा है, instructions मांग रहा है, but he is not getting proper instruction from the architect or the client. So for that he will decide कि मैं आपको 1 महीने में वेट किया, बहुत बार कॉल किया, आप लोग नहीं बता रहे थे, तो इसलिए मुझे 1 महीने और एक्सटेंशन मिलना चाहिए. The next is delay due to nominated subcontractors work. For example, say there were 3 contractors working parallelly in a construction project. One of them terminated the contract and left, and immediately any of the other contractors employed a subcontractor to complete that work. अब सब कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होने में, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट डॉक्यूमेंट साइन होने में थोड़ा टाइम लगता है. So because of that subcontract, if there is a delay, an extension of time can be asked for completion of that work. Next is opening up of work already covered, which is not due to the contractor's fault. It is something like contractor काम कर रहे थे, अचानक the client wanted to inspect something. For example, से curing चल रहा था, control amount of water दिया जा रहा था, अचानक client want to find out कि is the slope of the slabs and all perfect for roof drainage or floor drainage and all. So बाकी के काम रोक के he went to open up the work and inspect those things. So in those particular cases, it is not the contractor's fault for the delay, where the owner or the architect are related. Next is delay due to the work of artists or tradesmen engaged by the owner for specialized work. So मान लो कि you have employed a contractor for working in a particular structure, but at that point of time in a lower floor, you have also employed an artisan or a painter who is doing painting. So that means you cannot do any kind of drilling or vibrating or casting in the nearby rooms or upper floors. So for that specialized additional work engaged by the owner or the architect, there can be a delay. For that delay, the contractor was ready to work, but because of some other person's work, he cannot do his job. So he can still ask for an extension of time. But out of all these points, out of all these 9 points, A, B, D, H, and I, which is force majeure, extremely inclement weather, civil commutation, delay due to nominated subcontractors work, कि काम के बीच में another subcontract has to be nominated, selected, and then made to work, as well as delay due to artisans, जिसमें अगर the architect finds that ये सारे issues हुआ है और इसके लिए इनको ये सारे issues नहीं हुआ है या हुआ है but that has not affected the work, then he will not allow the extension of time. And if he says that you are not allowed for an extension, the contractor cannot go for a arbitration. But if there is something else, for example, say the loss of damage due to fire, अब आग से सच में problem हुआ है कि नहीं, contractor बोल रहा है नहीं आग आपके वजह से लगा है, और architect बोल रहा है नहीं आपके worker की वजह से लगे है. So there it can be arbitrated in the court or by a third party. So is the reasons for extension of time clear to everyone? There are 9 points. After the class, I will give you some time to read through these particular sections. The next is virtual completion and defect liability period, which is clause 42. Shamim, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So there are two things, which is a virtual completion and one is a defect liability period. Now it is very confusing because in different structure, different point is demarcated as the virtual completion. The architect, just give a minute. Just give a minute. Okay. Architect will certify in writing that the building is virtually completed, after which the contractor will formally hand over possession to the owner. So generally what happens is when 90% of the construction works are over, conventionally 90% हो गया है मतलब the owner can take the ownership of the house. So he will go for processing of the drawing की completion certificate submit करेगा municipality में, it will get approved and then once it is approved he will start shifting the luggages and start staying over there and do any other additional like ornamentations that is required. But those doesn't needs 100% completion of the construction to be done because that will take some time. So after the virtual completion, which is generally when 90% of the construction works are over, the architect will give in writing that the structure, to whom he will give it to the contractor, because the contract is in between the contractor and the owner or the client. So now once the architect approves that what this building is 90% completed and it is virtually completed, 90% actually completed, that means virtually it is 100% completed. So the contractor says कि आप लगभग पूरा काम हो गया है, बाकी मिस्त्री विस्त्री debris, when by the time I remove everything, like removing debris and all or construction waste, these are a part of his job, or removing the shuttering, scaffolding, or makeover of these wells, water supplies and all are part of contractor's job. So once all those things are done, only then he actually 100% is completed. But ये सब चीज करने के लिए ओनर को क्यों वेट करना है? He can take the ownership. So when the ownership is allowed, that is known as a virtual completion. It comes as a certificate, virtual completion certificate. So it is a certificate given by the or issued by the architect to the contractor. Okay. Now from that particular date, when the owner takes the possession, a defect liability period starts. It is generally 12 months, which begins as soon as the owner takes possession of a building. Now, in those 12 months, all the defects noticed during this particular period has to be satisfactorily rectified by the contractor. Contractor तो virtual certificate दे दिया है client को, so client रहने लगे. But जब से handover लिया है तब से लेके 12 months, he is supposed to rectify all the defects pointed out. Okay. Now, if he doesn't do so, now this rectification has to be done at a cost from the contractor's pocket. Now, if he doesn't do this rectification during this defect liability period of 12 months from the date of handover of possession, then the client will get it done at a cost which is the rest of that 50% of the retention money. जो सिक्योरिटी का 50% रिटर्न करके रखे हैं, और any other money which has been retained will be now utilized by the client to get this rectified. Okay. Next is clause 45 and clause 46, injury to person and injury to workers. So if any injury happens to the owner or damage happens to the property, the contractor is supposed to arrange for necessary insurance, or he has to take care of the risk factor that normal people other than workers might face. So the contractor himself has gone for a site visit and a chunk of concrete falls on his head. So what will happen if he is insured against this kind of accident? Then his family will get some amount of money, or there can be some other non-monetary insurance. He has taken an audit by paying some money, who takes care of the safety measures during the construction. So that, but in the contractor, this clause has to be there where contractor agrees that what he is going to do if any person during the construction gets injured. And if it is for the workers whom the contractor has employed, which is here in clause 46, the contractor has to give in writing that all those workers are covered by some insurances whose premium is paid by the contractor. So contractor pays some premium by maybe by cutting from the salary of the workers only, but that has to be proved during signing of the contract only. You know, contract में अभी तक काम शुरू नहीं हुआ है, काम शुरू करने के लिए एक legal promises are being made. Okay. Now, during the construction or even after the construction, there may be fire hazard. So it is the architect getting proper knowledge from the contractor that during construction also, if there is a fire, the architect is supposed to indemnify the client, but it is also the responsibility of the contractor to ensure the building under construction against the risk of fire. मतलब बिल्डिंग बन रहे थे अचानक बाजू वाले तुम्हारे साइड वाले प्लॉट में कोई लोग लोकल पीपल दे वर डूइंग ए तंदूर चिकन एंड ऑल, तो तंदूर का आग फेंक दिया एंड योर बिल्डिंग कैचेस फायर because of some negligence, or there was a riot happening, they broke into your under construction house and they put it into fire. So if there is an insurance already, you will get the claim which will cover up for the building that has been mishandled by this arsons, this people. Okay. And then we will get into two small sections, which is section 55, written, handwritten at the bottom, which talks of accepted materials or matter, which we'll discuss from a different handout. And the other is arbitration, 56. So these two are a different chapter which we will take up. But when will we take up? Now, with this, I conclude the IIS form of contract. Go through the clauses, go through the sections. The important ones which are critical, which are difficult to understand, I have tried to explain those. In the next week, take your time to revise all the chapters that we have discussed, the tenders, the contract. Get your handouts, keep a copy of those, because Microsoft Teams of NIT Rourkela is running short of storage. Right now, whatever we are taking, we are recording, but it is not getting recorded in Microsoft Streams. So later, if you want, you may not get a hand on this particular thing. So please make sure that not only you have understood, but also what is you have been able to follow up with what I was talking, and you have a handout of all the discussions, either in PPT or in PDF or in scanned copy, in any format. If possible, if you have a little bit of excess data for the day remaining, you can download the old classes. I am in a home quarantine right now, a preventive home quarantine. So it is not possible for me to upload all the videos in the YouTube right now. But once I get back to department, I will be uploading those in YouTube if I have a chance to record all those.